All right, I'm very excited about a long weekend coming up, but there isn't a day that goes by that all of us aren't worried about our health or thinking about how we could live better or considering all the options. And we are bombarded on an almost daily basis with you've got to do this, you've got to have this many hours of sleep. You must take these supplements. This is how you get your brain to work better. These are the kinds of things that you should do every day as part of your routine. Otherwise, you're going to just have a terrible quality of life, and it's too much pressure for many of us. And I found out about something really interesting. I've actually tried. I'll talk about the product in a moment or two. I've tried one of your products, but I found someone called Dr. Ralph Tetiamlalo, who's here with us, managing director of HG&H Pharmaceuticals. Now, these guys supply a clinically proven, patented, standardized, local botanical ingredient which manages stress, anxiety, and cognitive support. It's called Zembrin. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's so nice to talk to you. And you look full of the joys of spring. You're the best ad for your own product. I mean, it's not spring, it's autumn, but you're the best ad for your own product. And I love anything that'll help people manage their stress, live more, live better. So thank you for coming to join us this morning.
Pleasure's all mine, Gareth, and thank you for hosting us as well.
So tell me about how you got into this. I mean, you're a doctor, but I want to hear all about how you got into the world of creating these products.
Botanicals.
Yeah, and plants, especially, as I mentioned in the first half of the show, which you may or may not have heard.
Yeah.
But I love the way that there's this confluence of kind of ancient plant knowledge, and in Africa, we've got a long tradition of having plant products that people have used to treat things, and not just in Africa, but all over the world. And we combine that with modern science and technology to come up with the very best ways for people to improve their lives.
Yeah, no, very good question. So I'm a pharmacist by profession. A rodent trained at Rhodes University.
Okay.
Under the supervision of various supervisors, but Professor.
But unsupervised drinking, because that's what
I mean,
Rhodes,
you know
what
Rhodes is known for. Yeah. Sometimes I scratch my head to actually figure out that we actually graduated.
Yeah. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, so I give a lot of credit to the Department of Pharmacy at Rhodes University under the supervision of Professor Isidore Camphor and John Haig, who were quite instrumental, especially Professor Camphor, who had some sort of interest in botanical plant research at the time. Admittedly, though, I mean, when I started my career, I started in the ethical pharmaceutical space, working for ethical companies. And I must say, it was just by a stroke of luck that I ended up with this amazing company, HG&H, owned by the Halls Group of companies based in Nelspruit, family-owned business into agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
As one of the many companies that they do have is a company called HG&H, where they focus on botanical research with medicinal value. And I was sort of approached to sort of head and manage the business and take over my predecessor, who was actually one of the founding fathers of the business as well.
That's very interesting. And you use the term botanicals. So I presume we're not talking about all kinds of plant medicine. We're talking about flowering plants?
Yeah, so in our situation, it's a flowering plant, succulent plant, found primarily in the Northern Cape province, where the actual research was done by my predecessor, Dr. Nigel Kereke, and the late Dion Hofmeyer. Dion was the agronomist who sort of understood and studied the plant. Nigel was the one who actually took a keen interest in Scilitium. So the plant is called Scilitium tortuosum. At the time, he was in Australia. He's a medical doctor with an ethnobotany background, and took a keen interest, lived in the communities, went into the Northern Cape, did a lot of research with two communities, Polshoek and Noordeer, where the traditional knowledge was sort of acquired. And what HG&H did over the period of time is to apply modern technology, pharmaceutical applications, to develop a standardized extract that we use and sell for the management of mood elevation, stress relief, but more importantly, cognitive support as well.
All right, so let's just get into the weeds, if you'll pardon the use of that term, because I want to know all about this plant.
Yeah.
I also want to know about the people who had this knowledge of the plant before you guys, the pharmacists and the agronomists, discovered it.
100%.
So tell me a little bit about those.
So this is not a new plant to South Africa. In fact, the history of this plant dates well over 300 years. primarily belonging to the Khoisan tribe.
Hmm.
As early as the 17th century, the Dutch traders actually came across this plant and they were using it for trade. It was actually a form of currency at one point, and it was a well-known plant. The local guys noticed that anytime they chewed the plant, it gave them strength to their limbs, gave them memory, and they could go days on end without food or water. But being a botanical plant, right, it is dependent on how the plant is grown, the environmental conditions. So you have to control the growing protocol of this plant. Otherwise, you could end up with various cultivars of this plant. So it's also important to note that although there's a plant Sclerotium tutuosum, there are different cultivars of it, and it's also
Right.
because of the exposure of environmental conditions.
So do you guys grow it in greenhouses now and this?
Well, we grow it under sustainable cultivation, but not typically your typical greenhouse.
Because it grows in arid areas if
Yes,
it's in the Northern Cape.
the wild harvesting happens in arid areas, and which is where traditionally the Khoisan people lived, because they lived in dry, arid regions. But the plant is protected by the South African government under the Biodiversity Act, so we're not encouraged to do wild harvesting. So what we need to do is develop sustainable cultivation practices, which is where the late Dion Hofmeyer came in to help us get that right.
Okay, so Ralph, you need to help me understand this. Is there a special secret ingredient that you've identified among the chemicals that you can harvest from this plant? Yeah. And what is that chemicals effect on our nervous systems that is so beneficial? Like, how does it work?
All right, good. So there are alkaloids that are present in the plants, but depending on how it's grown, you could actually have a plant with no alkaloid activity, or you could have a plant that exhibits very high amounts of undesirable alkaloid activity, or just about the right amount. So it's important to know that there's different types of Sclerotium tutuosum. That's why we had to trademark ours as Zembrin, versus what we traditionally call as Canna, which is normally your unstandardized. The challenge with the unstandardized ones is that it has, either than not having any activity at all, you could actually have euphoric effects.
Oh,
so there is an industry.
Exciting.
Oh yeah, there is an industry out there, particularly in Cape Town, that
it's always in Cape Town. Huh?
Cape Town is notorious. Well, the unstandardized Sclerotium is used in the entertainment industry, so like in vaping and things like that. Oh. And there is a little bit of history to it. So when Nigel was doing the research, he realized that when the Khoisan people wanted to go on days on end, without food, water, they knew the cultivar to chew. So they chewed a certain specific type of it. Then when they wanted to sort of dance around the fire, play drums, sing and dance to their ancestors, they chewed another type of it. The later part of it is the one that we know that has high amounts of mesembrine. So mesembrine elicits euphoric effects. The ones that gives stress alleviation, especially focus, is the one that has high amounts of mesembrinone. And that's the one that we standardize in our extract. So we focus more on the mood elevation, but more importantly, the focus and the ability for you to just get through your day without any anxiety effects as well.
Well, I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that we don't hear about some Gen Z person who's got anxiety. So
yeah,
if this is a way for them to manage it, and there are lifestyle things that I suppose you can do, but we do live in the era, and I don't blame anyone. We live in the era of, if you could take a pill to solve a problem or to make things better, then you will. I mean, I take a bunch of supplements every day. Yeah. And if I were an anxious person, which I don't know that I am, but maybe it's because this Zembrin of yours has already worked, but I would take it.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that there are no, it's a natural product. So there are hardly any huge chemical considerations you need to make.
Yeah. So as part of our research, we have a full suite of what we call safety and toxicology research has been done. It's very safe. The Khoisan people were actually given it to the children to manage colic. In the early research days based in Cape Town, one of our early researchers was actually given it to pregnant women to help manage, especially first-time pregnant women, to help manage the anxieties of pregnancy. So this just gives you a little bit of comfort to know how safe it is. We use a very small dose, 25 milligrams. We can go as high as 600 milligrams if we choose to, but that's not important, because it's so potent at such a low dose that you could feel the effects almost very quickly. Very quick acting. Most people feel it within 30 minutes or less. But generally, on average, within the first 2 hours, you will start feeling the sensation of calmness, but not calmness to make you fall asleep, but calmness to keep you focused so they can just get on.
All right. So we've got anxiety being ticked off here. We've got people who are stressed. They can also, but the last one is probably the one that I'm most interested in, because I wonder how far off we are from pills that actually enable us to think faster, better, clearer. And then I hear about this, and you're telling me that your product has the ability to improve cognitive function.
100%.
I mean, this is manna from heaven to me.
It's
Tell me how it works.
So the alkaloids, we know of two, in fact three, but two main mode of action. So the mood, anxiety, and stress reliever comes from the fact that Zembrin has the ability to inhibit the serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So very similar to your anti-anxiety, antidepressant drugs on the market. But the cognition part of it is that simultaneously, Zembrin also has the ability to inhibit the PDE4 receptors as well. And that's
which are?
So these are receptors that, are responsible for cognition and focus, the ability to sort of improve reaction time, speed. So if you look at some of the applications where Zembrin can be used, where you've got to, let's say you've got a presentation coming up, you're feeling a little bit anxious, or, Zembrin takes off the edge, but keeps you alert. So in fact, what we coin is alert serenity, being alert, but doing so in a very calm state.
Well, anything that improves our cognitive function, you've got to be a fan of. Have you been trying it?
Oh, I love it. I must admit, when I got approached the very first time, I had my doubts being a traditional pharmacist, because initially I was...
Well, didn't you worry? Because I would have instantly thought, oh no, here come these homeopaths or these people who make tinctures out of some flower. This can't be serious.
100%. I mean, and that's what blew me away about working with HGNH and the kind of work that we do around R&D. So we're quite R&D focused. We have a full suite of clinical studies. So we have done the research to prove safety, to prove efficacy, and as well as quality. And our clinical studies actually do show the outcomes that we actually market. And that's what blew me away. And especially that it's a South African ingredient, home and bred in South Africa. Typically in the pharmaceutical industry, a lot of the research happens overseas, So all we do in Africa and South Africa, we just sell the finished product. But this is an amazing opportunity where we're very integral in the R&D of a local South African ingredient that actually is available globally,
And for those people, the conspiracy theorists in the comments here, I can see them already. You guys aren't big pharma. You're little pharma.
No, we're very small. I mean, unless you told you wouldn't even probably hear of us. Which is why we're doing things like this.
Well, this is why I've got you on here. Yeah,
to sort of just showcase what we do. Yeah,
and it is amazing how we have some things that people have just known for hundreds of years. Which plant to chew, for example, for X effect or Y effect, and it's become fashionable to talk about these things again and to take them seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, not a day goes by where I don't hear from someone who isn't by any means some kind of hippie who's dancing around in the forest without any clothes on, but from serious people who run businesses, people who do interesting things, people who are writing books, thinking about the next big thing.
Yeah.
And they tell me, there's this acacia bark that they've found that enables you to reach some kind of euphoric state that was chewed by the ancient Egyptian priests or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And these things seem to have staying power, which means that they can't be nonsense.
No, they're absolutely not. And credit must be given to the department, especially the Department of Forestry, Fishery, and the Environment, that has sort of exposed a lot of our Asian botanical ingredients. And also I must inform the audience that HGNH was the first company to receive what we call the bioprospecting permit, and we were also the very first company to sign what we call a benefit sharing agreement with the local community under the representation of the South African Sand Council that looks after the interests of the local community. So companies like ours, what they do is that they just sort of manage they manage companies like us not to exploit the indigenous people for commercial gain.
Yeah.
But the department has done a great job of exposing and educating and trying to get researchers, South African researchers. So we work with one, Professor Alvaro Viljoen from TUT University, who has been one of the most pioneer researcher involved in plant-based medicines. So there's a lot of exposure about it. It is costly. It's a costly exercise. So there's a difference between natural medicines and plant-based medicine. So when you apply the pharmaceutical principles to it, you've taken it as a notch further to be able to demonstrate safety, demonstrate toxicology and clinical studies. These things, unfortunately, are expensive. So that's why it sometimes serves as a deterrent to take our natural medicines to the next step. Right. But South Africa is blessed with lots of home use plants in indigenous material that actually have real medicinal value.
I remember that movie with Sean Connery in it that they made, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, Medicine Man.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember? And he's running through the I think it's the Amazon, and he encounters this tribe, and there's a medicine man there who says to him, no, there's this plant that grows up in the trees and it's very rare, but if you find it, it can do all kinds of wonderful things. Anyway, I mean, it's fiction, but he discovers this plant and it turns out that it could cure, I think it's cancer or whatever. And then, of course, the evil government is coming to cut down the trees or whatever. And Sean Connery gives off this one line, which I've never forgotten. He goes, I've discovered the cure to the plague of the 20th century, and now you've gone and lost it. And I thought of what you're doing with research and development in this respect. And to me, it occurs as a thing that we should be quite proud of, is that we've got unique environments in South Africa, and we've got ancient knowledge and we've got modern technology. And all of these can combine to develop potential cures, supplements, improvements in quality of life for people, which we should all be very, very impressed by. And I think that this is the leading edge of where we could start to make a major impact internationally. We're not going to do it in, massive laboratories, or not that we don't have those, but we can't really compete with the big pharmaceutical companies in Western Europe and America. But where we can is with the natural stuff.
100%, Gareth. And I must say, I mean, there is a shift now, even with big pharma. There's, I think there's the realization that new compounds are not coming out very quickly. So where there's a lot of investment now, it's in what we call the nutraceutical space. So that's the space we actually play in, plant-based medicines in the nutraceutical space. A lot of our big pharma companies now are now building and starting up nutraceutical arm. I mean, one of our very exciting product launches we have coming up in the US is with Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson is a household pharmaceutical company.
Absolutely.
But it's with the consumer care division called Kenvue, and we'll be launching a Zembrin Tylenol brand. I mean, that's actually happening.
Wow, that's a combo
this month. Yeah, so it's also something that we're quite excited about. Many other pharma companies like Bayer are also looking into it. Pfizer through Helion is looking into it. So the future of medicine is especially in the West, is nutraceutical, and there's a big market for nutraceutical ingredients. And I think Africa is rightly placed to be able, because some of these plants you can't grow them anywhere else because it's governed by law. And even if you try to do it, because of the different climatic conditions, you may end up with something that's totally different. So it's important for these plants to be grown where they naturally are available.
Just one thing that Congo Chris says here in the comments: please ask the guest if he knows about the benefits of umhlonyane.
No.
I don't either. That's all I got here.
I mean, I'll be happy to look into it.
Yeah. And this isn't, let's just be clear as well, this isn't homeopathy. No. Bless you if you're into that. And I know lots of perfectly okay people who are into it, but this is actual pharmacy and chemistry.
Yes, so it's clinically researched. We know the chemistry, we know what's responsible for the activity, we know our toxicology profiles, our safety, we know our tolerance, we know side effects. So we know how it relates to other drugs or other plants in the similar category. So we have a full suite of of information to be able to register. So we're currently in the USA, we're in some parts of Asia, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia. We're trying to get into South Korea, and these markets have super stringent regulatory requirements for you to be able to register.
You wouldn't be allowed to get in there if it wasn't well researched.
One of the big markets we're trying to get into is in the EU and the UK. So fingers crossed, maybe in about 12 to 18 months, we will be launching in Europe.
Okay, so the product's called Zembrin.
Yes.
And how often do you have to take it?
So preferably once a day in the morning, 25 to 50 milligram dose, which is 1 to 2 tablets or capsules. And it lasts you the whole day. You will be calm. You'll be focused.
So what I'd like to do is we've got James here, our producer.
Okay.
He's a bit slow on most days. But
is he on Zembrin, though?
No, that's why I think we've got to put him on there, and we'll see if there's an improvement. I feel like James could be at least 10% smarter, more energetic, less anxious. He gets very anxious. I mean, I'm not easy to work with, but maybe this will help. Flex, do you think we should try it?
I think we can give him 30 minutes and time.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do an experiment. Right here this morning, and we'll record something a little later. Thank you so much for popping by. Great pleasure to meet you. And thank you for telling us about Zembrin. I believe you're launching your own podcast series as well.
Yes. So we did something with the podcast party.
Very good.
We've got our season 1 done, a couple of episodes, and we'll be launching those very soon.
That sounds excellent. You're the host.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, well, you're very good at this. What can I tell you? It's excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's all we got time for this morning. But I want to thank both of my guests. First of all, Ralph, who's sitting here with us now, and also Costa. And we will put all the links to the various things that you need to know into the comments section and into the description of the podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, etc. And we will be back on not Friday because it's a holiday, not Monday because it's a holiday, but next Wednesday. Wow. So you got a whole week that you'll have to manage without the show, but you'll be all right. You'll manage. Just take some Zembrin.
100%.
There we go. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.
All right.
Hey, look, G. I told you from the beginning it can get like this. Diamond on my neck and I couldn't collect. On my mother, I came up, put it in y'all got the key to success. Rich, she, just by these truck. Big Paul out here. Whole crew, when much span work, got this shit done quit.